Here we are for the second part of this 15th of July. In my own neighborhood, just passing by. Rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, and the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians. On the toes, for those firefighters, plumbers, and bakers, nurses, doctors, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And we're going in the sun, just saw the movie How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon. It is one movie, which of course I saw this today, Tuesday, special $5. $5 movie, that was good. $5 movie, that was something of course which I enjoyed, of course. It's something which I'm gonna stretch out a little bit here. So we're going towards the sun. Already did my first part of the exercise. Now I'm about to embark on the second part of the exercise. For the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, electricians, and the plumbers, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those who are now on the trains, train conductors, plumbers, electricians, bakers. In the sun we go. Hot day. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street here from my own neighborhood. A few years ago, it's been a while, I didn't shop at that corner, but I guess enough of my face. We're gonna face the sun in 4, 3, 2, and 1. There we go, towards the sun, my Publik here in my own neighborhood, heading back to my new neighborhood, nothing that I want to go back to. Still financially stressed, still now joyous, happy, content that I got to see the movie How to Train Your Dragon. The motto of the Dragon Army is nobody's born a dragon, you become one. Behave well with those grocery store clerks, those serving some food. I got it $5, it was on special. Imperial rolls for $15, for $4.99, and for $4.99, and of course they were $15, and that's what we got, and that's what we gotta get, that rock and roll. Usually it's $10 for $4.99, but this one was $15, you know, so that's what we got to get a little bit of 5 extras, and that's always grateful, thankful, you know, because food is so important. So please, no food waste. Food producers, distributors. Here's where we were, watched the movie here, ate in the park there. Ate in the park with my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money. And if I make $1 million, gonna give half, 50% of every million, every billion, every trillion. That wasn't my friend because of the money, and I guess, you know, being a friend when you're down, you know, when you're rock bottom, when you're depressed, suicidal, when you're rock bottom, you know. If I make $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, I guess that would be somebody to give some of that good money. Money is to buy, sell, trade, future options. But nobody's perfect. The boys and girls in blue, ain't nobody perfect. That includes down me anyway, you know. Gotta sing for them as I sing for those who do their criminal rehabilitation, and that's what we gotta get drilling on the go for the butchers, the bakers, the plumbers, the doctors, and the firefighters, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and that's what we're gonna go get doing with that, and that's what we're gonna get doing on the love side of things, and that's things which we have to meditate on as we go now in the sun, you know. Always towards the King, the Pope. Always gotta rock and roll. The boys and girls in blue, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect, they're not perfect. Our firefighters, plumbers, electricians, and the butchers, the electricians, all those firefighters, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, we're gonna go down towards the sun. Gotta be careful here when you cross the street prudently. Turn your heads left and right. Left and right here. Left and right, and that's how we're gonna go drilling till the end in the sun. Riding in the sun, our brothers and sisters, boys and girls in blue. Ain't nobody perfect. That includes me and you. And as I sing for them some rock and roll, I always sing for the firefighters. I'm gonna sing some of that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who do their criminal rehabilitation, who take their second chances and turn your life around and get fit. And that's what I have been able to call for citizens for mass financing of fitness, mass financing, fitness and exercising, and, you know, keeping it in motion. I just ate a little bit, and for the farmers, the food producers, you know, construction workers, train operators, train conductors, firefighters, those in the kitchen doing some of that baking, those construction workers, the nurses, the daycare workers. Hey, we gotta give some rock and roll to the daycare workers who change some of those diapers. You know, I'm an independent worker and always gotta put some rock and roll for them. That's what I do. That's what I do. Geopolitics and 24/7 geopolitics and whatever the case may be with that. And that's how we have to go do it. And it's something which we have to be thinking about, meditating. And we see that this bridge here needs some rebuilding, and I always got to build bridges myself, but you see that our infrastructure, we have to mass rebuild the infrastructure with that, and that's how we have to be doing the mass rebuilding of our infrastructure, and the butchers, the bakers, and the workers, and the firefighters, and that's how we have to be doing with that, you know, sometimes which we have to be doing on the go, and you know, that's all this has to be redone, and we need some fresh paint here, fresh paint, fresh rehabilitation of this one. See, that's something which we have to be rehabilitated, and that's what we have to be doing with that, and that's what we have to be doing on the drill, you know, and something which we have to be on the love side of thing. Let's see, made in Canada. That's made in Canada. See, that's made in Canada, and that's where we are now. We're gonna go towards the sun. Look at that airplane. Airplane is going in towards the west. Where is it coming from? All the way from Europe, maybe all the way from Nova Scotia. It could be coming from Quebec. It's coming from the east. That I know, because now the camera's pointing the direction towards the east. But how many other information I don't know is going west. That I know, because I'm gonna turn and go west in the sun by the sunset, and clock in a few hours today as I did yesterday. Look at that beauty from my neighborhood, old neighborhood, just passing through, nothing that I want to go back to. And this is my old neighborhood here where we started filming, and this is beautiful. I think this is new. It's been there for like maybe 7, 8, 9 years. Of course, I got that retrograde amnesia, so my memory goes a bit on the blackouts, you know. I have trouble remembering my life prior to March 2014-ish, spring 2014-ish, and that's how I rock and roll. I was attacked by surprise a few years ago in Montreal Metro, fell, hit my head, and had a dislocated right shoulder, right arm, and was cracked right back, and was placed back, you know. Was cracked back, put it back, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. I have to retrieve, you know, I have to retrieve some archives because I was put on some meds. I was like in a coma, type of state coma for a few days. And I don't know exactly, it was 2014-ish, maybe late 2013. I don't know exactly, I got to retrieve. And that's my memory, is a little bit of a retrograde amnesia, a blackout on that. But so I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014, which is more than 11 years ago, right? Because now we're July 15th already. So I have a good retrieval of my memory of the past 7, 8, 9 years. But and when I go into that more than 11, there's blackouts. So that's what I live with, and of course I live with my scars, and I live with my trauma, I live with my financial stress. Thanks. That's how I do, and I gotta give a little bit of salutation for my friend there, citizen driver, you know. He backed up about four yards because I was supposed to go on the eye, but I appreciate that. He made an effort, he saw me coming, he said, hey, who's this? Who's this thing? What's this thing coming, approaching my car? Where this is a pedestrian citizen who appreciate you backing the car a little bit. 4 yards, I guess. It's a little bit of that football, eh? We're in the Publik, so I guess he likes football. Maybe gridiron, and he would have refereed me if I would have made some foul on the play. If I would have full snap, full start, foul on the play, he would have had to give me 5 yards penalty, you know. Please don't pollute in the Publik. He would have had to give me some yards penalty if he would have been the referee, or if I would have been the referee. He would have had to give me some 5 yards, or I would have had to give him some 5 yards, and that's 5 yards penalty, you know. That's how I was thinking about because of course he backed away the car, and I guess this is an Aspie thing. And if I would be good, because Aspies, you know, we're not allowed in the world, if I would be good at something, because I love dancing I'm good at, or more individual sports, but Aspies would be pretty good, at least myself as an Aspie, we would be good on being the referees. And of course my favorite sport is dancing, but of course it will be gridiron, you know, gridiron. gridiron, you know. It would be gridiron, you know. That's what it is. It will be gridiron. And look at that beauty there. That's a beauty. Those got some talent, got some art. And I guess we can go a little bit on the look. I guess it's not finished there, but we can cross the street here prudently, and we're gonna go take a look at here as we explore, you know, the beauties of our collective Montreal Hawk Island beauty of these beauties. Wow, it's quite something. See, I'm all for financing citizens who have a little bit of that talent, which this is really talented. I really like what they're doing with that, and that's really nice. Wow. This is really well done, man. Well done. Really good. That's nice. That's really well done. See, that's why I'm for financing art like this, you know. If I would be a billionaire, I'd be a public-private partnership to mass finance across the Democratic Imperial Republic, mass finance art like this, you know, because it's something which embellishes our common characteristics, our common city here, of which you can see that there's a lot of gray sometimes, you know, in our cities, and that's a little bit of color which I support. So back to what I was saying to my fellow individual citizen there, who of course was with the car, and he backed away about 4 yards. I'm saying 4 because it could have been 4.9, almost 5, or 4.3 yards, whatever the case may be, meters, 4.3 meters, or it could be yards or meters, but whatever the case may be, that's of course something which we have to be envisioning about, and we have to be consequential about in an everyday environment. I guess I treat it like a, you know, like a sports gridiron, because I love dancing, is my favorite sport, but of course gridiron is something which we have to be doing, and something which we have to salute the public workers here, you know, public workers. I wonder what they're gonna do here. Gotta salute our public workers across the North American Collective, and just gonna wait to traverse the other side, and that's basically what we're gonna do. So grateful, thankful, rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and going towards the sun. Gonna march that parallel there, see, because I want to be in the sun as much as I can, and I gotta salute the Hydro-Quebec workers whenever I see beautiful steel, metal, alloys combined here together. This is crucial for our, of course, electronics. And of course, everything that we do revolves around electricity a lot. My work now, of course, requires that I plugged in the phone earlier. So, gotta give a shout out, rock and roll, to Hydro-Quebec workers of the past 20th century, you know, who built 63 dams. Is something which we have to be mindful about in the circumstances of the situational awareness which we are and which we are involved with. And that's all we have to get doing on the sun shines. I mean, as the sun shines, you know. I don't know if this is closing, what's happening here. Oh, Cadillac, I would definitely get one Cadillac, 1963. My favorite car is Cadillac, the 1963 edition. 1960s, 50s, 70s, but if I would ever get a car, it would be the 1963 edition, and gotta give a little bit of that situational awareness. My fellow public workers here doing a little bit of that public work. Brains and muscle, that machine, salute. Gotta get it on the go and get a little bit of that arbeit to embellish our cities. And think about that machine. I always wonder where it was built, how it was built, what's constructed, or more technical things. But back to my fellow citizen who backed the car a few yards because he saw me coming and said, what's that thing coming towards me? I'm gonna make an effort. Maybe he's a citizens, androgynous, aspie, artist, athlete, pansexual. He didn't know all the other things, that I'm financially stressed. He didn't know that I'm open for rainbow loving if you're an adult, black, white, woman, man, you know. Only looking for friends with benefits only. I don't want to waste nobody's time, you know. I wish I could afford a massage therapy. So not knowing anything else that I do as a work, karma, whatever the case may be, he did do the right thing to back away a little bit of the car, you know. Just to back away a few yards. I say 4 yards like that, but of course gotta be 4 yards or 4 kilometers, and that's what we have to be doing on the go to get together. And that's what he backed away, and that's how he did the drill, and that's what I made the philosophical comparison to a gridiron game, to a football game. Go Niners, go, give some charity, reduce the cost, don't be so selfish, finance Texas relief efforts. And before I go on into the philosophical argumentation, and it's not really arguing, it's just a discussion, more of a dialogue lecture. But as I saw today, Tuesday the 15th, the How to Train Your Dragon, I'm asking, of course, for those who made money on the dragon, How to Train Your Dragon. Gerald Butler was quite a surprise. I didn't think he was going to play in, but of course, to get it on the Gerald Butler, give 1% of all the income proceedings, give 1% of the proceedings of the income of all movies which are made this week to Texas Relief, for Texas Relief operations. You know, Texas, telling my brothers and sisters, Texas, because this Quebec Canadian is down the North America Union Fusion 24/7, and I was born in the United States 3 times post 70-76, once as a man, twice as a woman post 70-76, served 2 different wars, same United States Armed Forces, 2 different wars. You heard that correct? I served 2 different wars in the same United States Army post 70-76, and that's how we have to be doing on the drill. And you know, that's just how we gotta live together. We got each other. That's why my way to fuse Canada best via the DRT, part of my bipolar, not to be confused with a psychological psychiatric condition, as in the bipolar condition, but of course my bipolar theory and philosophy for the fusion in the Democratic Imperial Republic, for the empire, for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the 21st century's geopolitical environment, a benevolent dominance and dominion, not in a tyrannical manner, but that's how we gotta get doing with that, and that's how we gotta get doing on the go, you know, to get on the squashing on the left and on the right, and in those circumstantial visions is where we are today. We always gotta get those parameters together for those who are neurodivergence as well, because that's what I live with, you know. So what I live with is, of course, as I discussed it, this is the second part of this Tuesday, because we did when we went to the movies, we did part 1, so this is the second one for July 15th, and I went to see, of course, How to Train Your Dragon. Last week I went to see Ballerina, 2 movies that I will to see again, and both movies exceeded my expectations. How to Train Your Dragon, I was surprised that Gerald Butler, of course, played in it, and you know, that's just how I gotta get that rock and roll. Turn your heads left and right, because in the public we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. And when we're in the public, those added responsibilities, duties, and obligations make us that we have to be thinking about others, individual sovereigns, citizens, and their liberty and their security, and ours and individual. That's sacrosanct, you know. The individual's responsibilities and individual liberties, and individual liberties and responsibilities and duties have to be counterbalanced, you know. The responsibilities, duties in the public, because I'm in the public, so I have to be aware of my other fellow citizens, and of course me, being that I'm part of this tiny minority of 0.44%, is not even, of course, 1%. It's not even half of a percentile. Not even half of a percent. It's 0.44 of the population who are neurodivergent and who are Aspies. So there's not a lot of Aspies in the world. So that's always something which I have to build bridges between myself as the fellow community who are the 99.56% in the matter, of course, that we are different, and our difference is expressing sometimes in, of course, in weird mannerisms or more strange, odd behavior, and of course little interpretation of certain things. And that's why we have to be congruent and consummate about it, and not necessarily just a merely academic, psychological, scientific manner of what I am myself, neurodivergent Aspie, and of course the fellow other citizens who might not know what even Asperger's is, but of course it is. Asperger's is, again, not a mental illness, it is a neurodivergence. It makes us predisposed to special condition, and they're not symptoms, because symptoms is for an illness, while Asperger's does not categorize as an illness. as an illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. This condition makes us, of course, that we are weird, odd, strange, odd, weird, and odd, and our manners sometimes can be weird and odd and seemingly bizarre. There's certain interactions which we have on the societal level, which of course make us part of this tiny small fraction of the population and the minority. So this tiny small population of the minority makes us, of course, that we have. I like to see people working out here on fitness conditioning, anytime fitness. That's good. Just popped out of nowhere. Anytime fitness. Yeah. I like to see people working out, and that's what we're gonna do there. So I have been able to call for the mass finance of citizens to work out, train, exercise, and of course working out, training, exercising has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice. And of course it's on that hot HOT day, so you gotta stay on that hydrate. We're gonna reach the park in my own neighborhood here, some new constructions, but just to finalize on Asperger's. So the aspiness of myself as a sovereign individual citizen manifests distinctly and maybe differently from another aspie. The individual and the collective, and then we have the minorities like myself, who's both part of the LGBTQ community, being androgynous, pansexual, and the Asperger's community, the Aspie. So Asperger's is not a mental illness. That's what we have to establish, and then we can proceed from that level. Asperger's is not a mental illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition, and my divergence, aspiness, manifests with those characteristics. Again, not symptoms. Turn your head left and right before you cross the street. In a certain way that can seem odd, strange, weird, eccentric, all these characteristics. But there's no medication. You cannot medicate Asperger's. Yes, if an Aspie is depressed and suicidal, then medication is, of course, something which you can give. I was depressed and suicidal for a few years before 2017, and that's all we have, and that's all we have to learn to work on the characteristics. And of course, my learning is thanks to my anonymous friend, who was my friend because of the money, who gifted me a few. But actually, I was gifted two books. And one was, of course, two books. And one was, of course, Alone. And I learned a lot through those books, how I am different, and how, of course, my difference is something which sometimes we can be open for misunderstandings, and open for, of course, not just misunderstandings, but we can be vulnerable because we're different. And that, thank you, anonymous friend, who was my friend because of the money, for those books which I read the most important chapters for myself, and revised and integrated the most of my capacities and abilities. How I have to constantly work on my characteristics of aspiness, aspie characteristics. And those characteristics, again, they're not symptoms. I'm just gonna disinfect the hands a bit. Encourage you all to keep the protocols. The protocols of hygiene before and after. I encourage you all to keep the protocols. Smells. The hygienic protocols which we established during COVID, I keep to the best of my abilities. The protocols of COVID, hygienic protocols, because we got bacteria, microbes, and germs just now. Think about it now, right? I'm gonna touch these buttons, and I don't know how many people touched them before when they were there. Nonetheless, there's a possibility for germs, bacteria, and microbes. So the possibility for germs, bacteria, and microbes accumulating on the hand, due to, of course, the fact that we have those germs and bacteria and microbes which can be attached. I mean the red attached to ourselves in different ways. So we always gotta be prudent, and even now with the card, see I'm taking it out, so I put it aside. I have to change my card, I need a new one. I need in the red, but I just wanted to get enough money for the weekend, for the Sabbath, for food, and for next week, because I want to take my anonymous friend again next Tuesday to see Superman. I'm gonna go 3 Tuesdays in a row because it's least expensive, and we decided to go to see How to Train Your Dragon instead of Superman, and we're gonna leave Superman for next week. Maybe do 2 movies next week. That means that we're gonna be seeing 444 in July, maybe some more, but that's just how we're gonna rock and roll with that. So now I'm just gonna see I'm in the minus already, way deep in the red, financially stressed. My only stress now is really financial, besides financial stress. I play that rock and roll as I go, rock and roll. So now I'm gonna clean my hands again. Clean my hands again here. See, So that's what I'm gonna do, clean my hands, rub my hands, disinfect. 10 seconds, rub. Rub. That's what we gotta get doing like that. So we're gonna rub, and that's how we're gonna get on that go, Hey, construction workers, I need you. I'm all about work, friends with benefits only, and that's how we're gonna get that rock and roll here. This new construction, please disinfect your hands, It's super important to disinfect your hands. You got some of that hygiene, you got some of those microbes, bacteria, and germs, Microbes, bacteria, and germs, microbes, bacteria, and germs. Bacteria, microbes, and germs. Bacteria, microbes, and germs gotta be rub without alcohol to get those hands clean. You gotta get dirty but get back clean. I'm not perfect, far from it, I don't make any pretense whatsoever. I have flaws, I have scars, I have survived COVID, survived being depressed, survived being down and out, survived being isolated, survived my Asperger's, which the 3 main problems with Aspies is 3 main problems. So we are different, right? But this difference, it has some positives, because I am very, very, very good at geopolitics, to the point that it's my special interest. So I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and I do it on the daily basis, the concordium on the daily basis. And that concordium, meaning that I study, that I engage in geopolitical theoretical analysis with intensity, super focus on a daily basis. And I have predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now, So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, in October, November. So I am good at that. I'm good at rock and roll. I'm good at dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport. But socially, in the social aspect, we Aspies lack the knowledge, the information, the wisdom, the things as simple as, when somebody asks, I'm going to give you a concrete example. When somebody asks, how are you? So some Aspies might, of course, say, if they're feeling whatever they're feeling, they might say directly how they are. So me, I usually respond, I'm so-so, or I'm okay, I'm good, or I'm financially stressed. Financially stressed. So that's just, you're supposed to say I'm good, even if you're not, So I guess these things that we all pretend, that we all pretend together, it just doesn't compute in our Aspie brains, because our brains are different. So we have mutations of the brains, 4 little mutations, or whatever, it could be whatever, but at the micro nanoscale. So they're not visibly on the exterior side of the brain. So they're not outwardly visible, these mutations. They do not protrude in the brain in a manner that is visible, right? So that's just something which you have to keep in mind, that they're not visible on the brain outwardly. So they're not visible, but they're internal, right? The internal on the micro nano scale is the Aspie brain mutated. And due to these mutations, we have these problems with not the social matters, not necessarily mathematics. For example, I could do mathematical calculations, and of course fractions, and especially percentages. And I just love math. I do math constantly when I calculate the prices by my head. So I guess I would classify as above average if we are to quantify whatever we can quantify as mathematics. And Aspies have to be encouraged in those secret, in those of course special interests. In those special interests, in those special interests, right? So that's just aspiness. So aspiness can manifest itself in different ways. I'm gonna go now towards the sun, and we're gonna cut it on the other side. That's how we have to be doing. So basically, Asperger's is the neurological mental divergent condition, and there's no medication for Asperger's. You cannot medicate Asperger's, right? You cannot. It's not something that it's an illness first and foremost, and it's a long condition, right? You cannot medicate Asperger's. It's not something which can be treated because, again, it's not a illness. One can understand it, one can work on the characteristics. Again, not the symptoms, not symptoms. So the characteristics are these. For example, to give you a concrete example, you might see somebody inspecting an object very closely to the head. Bring it so close to a person's face. Bring it very close to a person's face. That, of course, is something which might be weird in the store for somebody to do for like a 44 seconds, for like a minute. And we might inspect certain objects, certain characteristics that, of course, might seem odd. For example, the oddities of where is the product made. For example, where is the product made? Or other things, other details of which, of course, might not. It's concern with details. Obsession with is really an interest. Obsession with details. So that special concern with details is something which makes us, which is a characteristics of Asperger's, right? So this aspiness is how we are manifesting in the world, or we might repeat twice, 2-3 things, the same phrase. We might repeat the same phrase, or echolalia might be another characteristic. So saying the same sentence or the same paragraph or phrase that somebody utters in the exact same similitude. The same similitude and the same way, manner. I'm just gonna stretch a bit here in the sun, in my old neighborhood. Gonna rock and roll. In the sun we go. For the youth, the bakers, the cooks, the truckers. See, for example, now I see this truck, and here we're close by the highway. So my mind now focuses on integral, of course, representations and manifestations, of course, that we are close by the highway. And of course, the fact that there are trucks, and that the fact that those trucks might potentially hold potatoes, bacon, milk, butter, bread, condiments, for essential condiments and goods for our continuing civilization, from the earliest born today in the empire of the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3 to the elder. So that's what you have to understand about Asperger's. That is not a mental illness, and that we see the world differently. So I give you an example. So for example, go Hydro-Quebec, go. Gotta love those who build and those on the field now to work that Hydro-Quebec. See, I don't see it that well, but I see it blurred, that number 33. Then there's point and 7044 with the last 44 at the end. So that's Aspi. We would be focusing on that number, while somebody would be, you, the 99.56%, you might say, what the like, I didn't even see really that number like on the side. I don't really care. I saw Hydro-Quebec. It's things like that, That's just aspiness, how it manifests outwardly. So it's not a mental illness. It is just something that I live with. So I have to be told, for example, I love that yellow. I gotta come and say hello. What a beautiful garden here. 777. Let me and my anonymous friend win, because if I make $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, in a parallel life I design supercomputers, science, mathematics, and I have an office where it is 777, not 4 sevens, but look at these beauties. Just love, I do love yellow flowers a lot, as you know from my past videos, and these I'm gonna smell a bit. Let me smell. Slight scent, slight minty, but wow, what a garden. What a garden. We're really embellishing the whole feel on my journey here, on my fitness journey, because I ate three chicken strips, and I ate about, I think I ate 3 and maybe 8, 7. They were small, 7 little imperial rolls. They were small, and chicken, 3 pieces of chicken, and I got 3 for tonight leftover. So after my workout, I'm gonna double it, do it again. So here we are on the journey, you know, as we go towards the sun. I wanted to go on the journey that I haven't been in a few months. You know, sometimes we come by this side, my old neighborhood here, and sometimes we go by towards the sun. Now I'm going north, and that's how we have to go north and south. And we always have to keep in mind, you know, of this civilization being a privilege, and all the truckers now, my brain now functions because I'm parallel, Integree to of course, parallel and integral to what's transpiring here on the side, which is of course all the trucks going north and south. So they're going north and south, and that's how we got, and that's how we gotta get doing on that drill, and that's how we gotta get that drilling for the left and for the right and for the Z, you know. That's how we gotta get that appellations, and that's how we have to be drilling on that, and we gotta get on that condimental sports and abilities. But that's of course something which we have here. This highways goes north and south, you know, so it's north and south, but of course something which we have to be underlined about, that these elements which are of course potentially open for sabotage and espionage, for sabotage and espionage, for that sabotage and espionage, right? And now we are of course vulnerable due to the geopolitical conditions and the geopolitical events that have transpired in the past 4 years since COVID. Of course, we live in a different world, and of course it's a Dragon versus Trump event, and that's what I'm good at. Geopolitics. In 2019, October, November, I predicted what's happening now. Now we're gonna move into geopolitics, my DRT and my bipolar, not to be confused with the psychological, psychiatric condition, but in the bipolar, when I'm saying bipolar geopolitical strategy for the total security, total service, total defense of the North American collective. Of course, to vertebrate the fusion of Canada and United States via my DRT debt refusion theory, and the DRT debt refusion theory, and debt refusion theory, the CIT citizen integration theory, and the DFT democratic fusion theory, to be in the concordium for fusing Canada and United States into the democratic imperial complex, which is fundamentally my dream for a public-private partnership across the North American complex. And that's about how we rock and roll. And with that, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, plumbers, the train conductors, gotta give a little bit of that train conductors for them, and gotta give it for the left and the right, and in the, you know, it's something which we transverse together. And my only stress now is financial, but the problem is, so I'm going to discuss, before I go into geopolitics, I'm going to discuss the 3 main problems which Aspies Aspies face 3 main problems in our daily lives. And long term, this is long term. 3 main problems, and myself included. One would be lack of friends. So I don't have many friends, but from now on is 15th of July, my second video of the day, workout, training, and exercise. Encourage you all to do so. I've been on a fitness journey since 2017. Friends, lack of friends. I only will friends with benefits from now on, and either that or pledge your allegiance, and you can see that's kilometers and miles away, but you can see part of the mountain there. It can be seen roundabout from the circling on the island of the Hawk Island, Montreal, in which we find ourselves, from Hawk, H-A-W-K, Hawk Island. You can see part of the mountain there atop, and now we're going to traverse on the other side, but you can see the mountain even from all around it, because I live on an island surrounded by a big river, and there you can see the mountain, but that's kilometers and miles away. Keep that in mind. So you can see it from different parts of the city. So three main problems we face is lack of friends. And myself, from now on, just this 15th of July 2025, just to be understood, I don't want to waste anybody's time, you know. It's just friends with benefits only, friends with benefits only. I don't want people to waste my time and to waste other people's time, because life is short. I could die today, bury me with Papa Crowley, a third of me up in New Jersey, a third of me up in the city of the pyramids, you know, a third of me city of the pyramids, where I lived in a past life as a priestess, warrior, farmer, butcher, scribe, etc., 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 etc. And of course, a third of me up in Mount Royal at the back of the Belvedere. One third. I guess you're gonna split me in four and see how my brain now works. I always integrally put at this point event here, me being at the corner of Royal Mount of the Savannah and meditating on all the highways across the North American Collective, Montreal to San Francisco, and everybody and all the cost and the stress of living, the increasing cost of good, of course, the economic costs that are keep increasing, and the fact that we have so many trucks and truckers across going east, west, north, west, south, east, west, roundabout, doing with the groceries, and of course passing with the milk, the butter, the bread, and of course the cheese, the carrots, the cucumbers, everything that's transpiring now. Everything that's transpiring now. Everything that's transpiring now. From the east of the west, integrally and collectively, we gotta salute the truckers transporting with the goods. They're so integral for the continuity of the North American civilizational complex. And now it's my turn to rock and roll with that. And that's how we gotta turn our heads left and right. It's Royal Mount here. So we're gonna drill it a bit in that zigzag, and we're gonna go towards the sun, because that was the point for me coming north. We're not gonna go further north. Maybe one day we're gonna go north to the river up north. Maybe in the coming days. By the end of summer we'll do it. So summer is ending by September. So by the end of summer I'm planning to go both in the south, because that's where mostly we go by the river in the south, but also to the tip north, to the north tip. To the north tip, and then go to the east and go to the west, and that's how we're gonna get rock and rolling with that, to go to the east and go to the north and go to the west. So that's how we have to transpose and transpossess, and of course be integral about all our geopolitical complexities of which we face. And of course we have to state that we are in an unprecedented situation in the 21st century, and you know, as it is a Dragon versus Trump edition, Granddaddy Trump made a mistake. If you don't know, do know that I'm carrying in the backpack. Got that red backpack. Some of my leftovers, some of the tomatoes for my anonymous friend. And I know she took the tomatoes, but left some cucumbers, whatever it be. And I got those gloves. Red gloves, which are donated by my anonymous friend back in 2018. Is that a 5G, 4G? I think there's a mixture of 3G, 4G, 5G towers there. I guess pinpoint location at the micro level to see all the tracking that's being done now of all the goods, the citizenry connected, of course, into the plateau of a super net, which I created in a parallel life. Because in a parallel life, I'm a super scientist. I design, build supercomputers, satellites, microchips, ICBM rockets, all things to do with science and civilization, and super tech police espionage, super tech surveillance for the greater good, of course, not to be abused or tyrannically, but that's what I do in a parallel life, where I'm an aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher. Here, in that parallel life, I'm a super scientist, and I build supercomputers, antennas, telecommunications antennas for radio, television, and super smartphones, cell phones, and I design, build supercomputers. Hey, this is the new... Okay, that's a new... This is the new... Okay, let's go check it out. Royal Mount. We're not gonna go in, but this is the new complex build here. Royal Mount. This is new, Royal Mount. I gotta come with my anonymous friend. This is a new complex build, Royal Mount complex. That's all we have, and that's how we gotta get doing, the Royal Mount complex. Royal Mount complex. Here we are for the Royal Mount. I'm just gonna go by there, turn around about, and then up in the sun we go. So now that I'm on the subject that my anonymous friend are just gonna get a million, I hear those firefighters, the ambulances. Gotta get out of the way, you know, you gotta get out of the way. Slow down if you're on the drive and you hear the firefighters, if you hear the ambulance. If you're gonna be late, I've been late, I've been delayed, I've been depressed, I've been suicidal. Just think of the other citizens as well. If you're a millionaire, a billionaire, mass finance fitness, give some charity, mass finance, inject capital for employment, for cleaning. There's a lots of work to be done. We just got a mass financing fitness, mass financing the reconstruction of the North American Collectif public-private partnership-based initiatives for the mass rehabilitation of the infrastructure, something which we have to do on a daily basis. Don't be so selfish. I'm not totally selfless myself, you know. I like my wafers, I like my cheese. I wish I could afford a massage therapy session, but millionaires, billionaires, you know what? Finance the firefighters, finance those who pick up the garbage, sanitation workers, finance them. Look at that beauty there. In the corner, graffiti. Finance them a massage therapy session, finance them some loving, and here we are. Quite interesting how it's built, and how it was built here, Royal Mountain. First time I'm coming, and I'm not gonna come there, but I'm gonna go eat. I wish I could give my anonymous friends some money to eat here, and that's all we have, but we're just gonna circumvent by the side. It looks like a nice place. I guess we always gotta get that meditation side of things, and it's always good for the buildings of new environment, getting some of opportunity for employment, and that's all we have to be doing like that, and that's all we have to be doing. go here, quite extensive. Hey, it's nice. I'm not gonna go really deep in it, but here I wish I could afford to get my anonymous friend to get a little bit of that loving. Integree, cuisine Mexican. Is that biblical? Balam. Is that biblical name? And here's some nice predication and some nice loving for them. That's what we got. Anyways, next time when I have more money, but nice. I guess it's a nice complex, and that's all we got on the nice complex with the go. And that's a nice place there. See in the corner, they got a little bit of that good. So it's a nice place. I kind of like it, and that's what it is, and that's all we got, and that's how we got to get that rock and roll, and we got to get on the drilling, you know. Always got to get it always on the go, and hey, this is Royal Mount. If you come learn some French and go spend here in Quebec. We need our tourists, and we need to fuse Canada and United States best. Now we're going to go back in the sun, because the Royal Mount is going to be there. Although the sun will always shine and always set. Every second the sun shines and the sun's setting. But I just wanted to see a little bit, get the feel. I guess next time we're going to go deeper in. Always for the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors. This is the newly open complex Royal Mountain. Since it's a new construction, I will now to say, of course, because it's a Dragon versus Trump edition, that of course the Dragon versus Trump I will to build 4. But before I go into that, because I digressed, I will to say the most 3 main problems that aspies like myself face. And keep in mind that I'm part of a tiny minute community of 0.44%, less than 1 percentile, less than half of a percentage, 0.44%. And of course, due to that fact, we aspies, lack of friends, from now on, 2025, July 15th. Again, I don't will, W-I-L-L with capital letters, will. I don't will to waste nobody's time. I work out, train, exercise, do geopolitics, do rock and roll. And if you want LOVE, friends with benefits, I could use some massage therapy, exchanging buddies. I don't will to waste nobody's time. It could be my last day, it could be yours. So life is too short for arguments or disagreements, especially when you have cleared a little bit of that, made some peace with your whatever XYZ, and rehabilitated like I have, you know. I've been through hell and back. And the other point is, of course, the depression. See, Royal Mount, high depression and suicidal rates. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. High depression and suicidal rate, high depression and suicidal rates, and high depression and suicidal rates. 9 times more, of course. 9 times more, of course, than the average population. 9 times. 9 times. I was depressed and suicidal. I was there before 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast. Went in August in Vancouver, BC, 3.5 days with my anonymous friend by bus. And then September 2017 by train, 25 hours and 44 minutes from Montreal to Halifax. And that got me out of being depressed and suicidal. And I've been on the fitness journey ever since. I was about 293 pounds then. Before that, depressed, suicidal, and that event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Quebecers, Canadians, and my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, the USA, which we're gonna merge the 10, the 50, and the 3 into the Democratic Imperial Republic. I'm calling to sign the new public-private partnership and the new constitution for the 21st century, total SSSD, Dominion, Security Service, and Defense, and based on my geopolitical philosophies and initiatives and dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom. And the third problem is, of course, the third problem is, of course, not depression or suicidal, but way too high, unacceptable for my community, which is tiny, small, even small compared to the LGBTQ community. The LGBTQ community, Gen Z, millennials like myself, is between 6%, 5%, and 7.7% between millennials and Gen Z. So it's less than 1% Aspies. Not a lot of people even know what Asperger's is, right? So the third problem is 80% unemployment. That's 11 times higher. 11 times higher. Can you think about that? 11 times higher for my community. So it's totally unacceptable. I had many jobs in the past 7 years, especially during 5 years of COVID. I even worked here at one point. I think it was 2 weeks. And I was, of course, I did work different warehouses with placement agencies. The problem is that Aspies, you have to let Aspians know to of course redeem the situation. You have to let me know if I offend, because Aspies, we don't understand these things that become difficult for us. We might be able to do a lot of different tasks to do, you know, but on certain things of a social dimension, we don't fully comprehend and understand certain things. Just read what Asperger's is, and that's why we are vulnerable, because we don't understand fully the social dynamics sometimes of the social interactions or the way we communicate. For example, if you ask an Aspie like myself, how are you, and I'm moody, I'm gonna say I'm a bit moody, you know. If I am because I'm financially stressed, I say it, I'm good, but I'm financially stressed. So you're supposed to say, okay, you know, we'll pretend together, but the Aspie brain does not compute that, you know. Does not compute that. So I guess we kind of all pretend sometimes together, you know. We kind of all pretend, you know. But we have our individual nature. And of course, I guess it's a lot of theater and mask wearing, and also the social dynamics. Because if you ask somebody how he is, how she is, how isn't he, or a bit upset, Aspies will not necessarily console and say, yeah, you know. That's the problem with Asperger's. Again, we might not verbally console. So we might not offer verbal consolation, but we will, of course, offer some solutions if we can. Solutions if we can help. If we can't help, we'll offer. If we can't, we won't. Right? So it varies. But as an individual Aspie, the problem is we might not necessarily verbally say, oh, I'm sorry for you. For example, I give you a concrete example. It happened, I think I had it on the camera. I was on the mountain and somebody asked how I am. I said, I'm okay, but I'm financially stressed. And the person, of course, said, that, of course, I'm sorry. So I said, why are you sorry? It's not your fault, right? Because our brains, these social dynamics that we all pretend or we wear these theatrical masks, Aspies, it's hard for our brain to process them. So it always requires to build bridges, some small bridges, medium-sized bridges, small bridges, medium-sized bridges, big bridges, and super big bridges. Small bridges, big bridges, super small bridges, super big bridges. So those 4 categories again can be split into 4 others. So the 4 can be split into 4. So 4 with each one having a sub-level. Right? Like today, if I ask me how I am, what I would do, the only thing I would embellish my life would have regular massage therapy sessions, because of course I work out, train, exercise, but I see these truckers might be going for 12 hours. I don't know if they can afford a massage therapy session or not. Maybe they should, you know. They should. So that is something which, of course, is congruent to Asperger's. So Asperger's is this neurological mental divergent condition, and that's just how we live on a daily basis. Our brains are different due to these mutations. So those are the three main problems: the lack of friends, high suicidal and depression rates, and unemployment. But unemployment is super high, super high, super high. Super high, 80%, 80, 4 out of 5, 10 out of 8, 10 out of, so it's 8 out of 10, 80 out of 100. Shouldn't smoke, buddy, when you turn. I think it was smoking, I see it blurred, but it looked like he was taking puffs, especially when it's green. The machines can be repaired, you know. Whatever. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he needs some love, some massage. Maybe he needs more massage therapy session than I do. Somebody finance him. I don't know his financial situation. I'm not much of a critic if I don't offer some concrete solutions. And what do I know? I know that the truck drivers and the trucks are, of course, but he wasn't really a truck driver. That looked like he was picking something from a truck that cannot be delivered because the truck broke down. It looked more like that, you know, like a temporary relief. So I don't know. I do know is that billionaires, millionaires should finance those who pick up the garbage, the sanitation workers, and across the collective. Other things, well, you got 3G, 4G, 5G, tracking. I'm financially stressed. I can use a massage therapy session, friends with benefits only. I have my dream. The dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, you know. The dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. The dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom is part, of course, of the Democratic Imperial Republic, a massive public-private partnership, which I'm calling for all to support and implement my Trinity of theories. The DRT, DFT, debt refusion theory, and the democratic fusion theory. That I know. But other things, I am mediocre, average, so-so, completely better if I sit on the sidelines. Or referee, because I could be good at that. It is a sports, I guess Aspies would be better to be a referee, you know, the rules and regulations and then the penalties to be given, such as in NFL gridiron, you know. I'm back to what I was saying, because it's a Dragon versus Trump event. My will, of course, is to build the 4 together. That's my dream, you know, to build 4. Because I got those red gloves in the backpack. Back again, auctioning this backpack for $1 million. It's been used a lot for the past 4 years, more than 4 years now. I used it a lot, I wore it a lot, and auctioning the underwear, auctioning up to my military style grade shoes. I'm not wearing my military grade shoes. I'm wearing those who were gifted to yours truly by an acquaintance for the holidays. So wearing those, and that's something which I gotta be wearing on that, and auctioning them, the socks, the underwear, everything that I'm wearing for $1 million. To give half 50% to my anonymous friend, even this lion bag. Thank you, my anonymous friend, for giving me the lion bag. It's lion, L-I-O-N, not lying as in the verb, not being honest or being dishonest or not being truthful, saying falsehoods, but the beast, the lion. And this one I bought secondhand. Actually, a lot of the things I'm wearing are secondhand, you know. And this hat, I'm auctioning it for $1 million to give half 50% to my anonymous friend. So that's how we're gonna rock and roll it today. Let's go for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, truckers on the road. Encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Let's build a 4. My will to build 4 on the Canadian-US border, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Before it used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz Arena, before it was to be known as the Louisiana Arena. It's in New Orleans, Louisiana. I changed names several times, 3 times, just like yours truly changed names. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself. Took blood, sweat, and tears to turn that A into an O. And of course, to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, let's build the biggest sports complex for sportists and perpetuities, Sports 24/7, that's kind of a Latin spin on the word sports, and perpetual sports, just as we're gonna sign, let's do it on 9/11 on the mountain. 9/11, September 11th, signed, do amendments to both Canadian Constitution and U.S. Constitution to fuse, merge Canada and United States, and for the Democratic Imperial Republic, the Perpetual Imperial Union. Perpetual Imperial Union, the Perpetual Imperial Union, the Perpetual Imperial Union of Canada and United States. So that's why we have to be drilling, and of course to build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, and that's what we're gonna get doing on that. So let's build it on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border. That's how we're gonna get drilling and build it. It'll be 11 times bigger than the Harbor, where the Harbor Bowl, aka Super Bowl 47, which is one of my top 5 Super Bowls. Paradoxically, my 49ers lost. And it happened to be before then in Super Bowl 47. I think it was named Mercedes-Benz Arena. Now it's known as the Caesar Superdome. Caesar Superdome. It's Louisiana, New Orleans. Well, many Super Bowls were played there. One of my favorites is also known, aka with many surnames, the Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, aka Bro Bowl, aka Super Bowl 47. My 49ers lost by 3 points, but it's still one of my top 5 Super Bowls of all time. And one of the top 5 is not a 49er going to the finals and winning. Of course, that's the only one. When my favorite, it was one of my top 5 favorites, the Harbor Bowl, is where my 49ers lost. But one of my other Super Bowls, which I love, is when Tom Brady won last with the Patriots against the Rams, 13-3, the lowest ever scoring Super Bowl. And Super Bowl 47 was the first time when two brothers faced each other on the opposing sides as head coaches. Never, of course, who would have thought that would be ever happening in this history? It happened in Super Bowl 47, where my 49ers lost by only 3 points, but still, by 1 point on any given Sunday. Dancing is my favorite sport, though, so let's build for sportists in perpetuities. The Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna have sports 24/7, high school sports, volleyball sports, boxing sports, all sorts of sports. Build it, massive public-private partnership together with the forgotten goddess GODDSS. I credit me surviving COVID, which I had, and which was like death, pestilence, and disease. COVID for me was like really like death, pestilence, and disease. COVID was like death, pestilence, and disease. COVID for me was like death, pestilence, and disease. Let it be my enemies, goddess, please. Got some golden line in the red there. Wow, this car has been there for like 4 years. Even in winter, sometimes I pass and it's there. Quite interesting. So build a forgotten goddess temple. Build a forgotten goddess temple. Oh my goodness, blackberries. Who would have thought in the middle of the wild berries. So build a forgotten goddess, GODDSS. I credit to build a forgotten goddess temple with trillions of kisses, millions of trillions of marching steps, rock and roll and fitness, and the forgotten goddess temple. Parallel, of course, the forgotten goddess temple to be built. The pyramid. House of the Dragon, Scarlet, Crimson, that is. Scarlet and Crimsons, are shades of red. And of course, the Rainbow People's Palace, which I will to build, the Rainbow People's Palace. The Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ community, being that I am androgynous pansexual, and my fellow neurodivergent community, and to be building it and to be rock and rolling on the drill, and that's all we have, and that's what we gotta get doing on that, and that's what we gotta get doing on the love. Somebody loving, please make some LOVE as the favorite sports activity with consent for Rainbow Dragon, and some push-ups. Don't be so selfish. I'm not totally selfless, but tough economic times. I predicted geopolitically what's happening now back in 2019, and it's a dragon versus Trump. Me and Donald Trump are gonna fight it on the Canadian-US border to inaugurate the building and the opening of this biggest ever sports arena ever built in the world. Let's build and make it the Dragon Trump Sports Coliseum, or the Imperial Sports Coliseum for Perpetual Imperial Union, the birth of our empire together. Of course, the Democratic Imperial Republic, constituting the fusion of our resources and the population of the United States into this new geopolitical entity, which we're going to checkmate the for BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, the whole world, I guess. Together here from Montreal, Hawk Island, build a complex for total security, total service, total defense based on my new 911 Dragon Army total protocols. New 911 Dragon Army total protocols, which am good, of course, at philosophizing security ideas and theories into philosophy. Takes some brain, some muscle, and I created my own workout training program system back in 2019 to go hand in hand with aforementioned World War III scenario, of which, of course, congruently and congruently, of course, I have been asking, of course, them to be implemented across the North American Collective. In a public-private partnership manner. And of course the situational complex, which we have to be doing on that, which have to be on the solution based on the protrudent of the spending and buying, and whatever the spending and buying is colloquially. Now somebody's swiping those credit cards. Oh, we got record credit card debt. Somebody's swiping those credit cards now. So that's where my DRT comes in theory. So let's go, Donald Trump. Fight me on the Canadian-US border before I go into the DRT a little bit of gratitude, grateful, thankful. My rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and always congruently meal, of course, to see somebody loving, which is something which we gotta get a little salutation for the train conductors, the plumbers, butchers, electricians, the firefighters on the sunset. Beautiful sunset. Every second there's a sunset and the sunrise, Every second there's a sunset and the sunrise. Every second there's a sunset and the sunrise. Every second there's a sunset and a sunrise. And I gotta give a salutation to the train conductor. So now I'm gonna discuss the DRT. Paradoxically, the DRT, debt fusion theory, is the solution to where we are now. Why do I make that statement? Because now we have four main economic, commercial problems. The four main problems, economic problems, are, even today I gotta say, last week I got those pyramids. They're wafers. They're 5. They used to be 125. They went up to 175, 50 cents. And now from 175, the second increase, again 50 cents. They're 225. But 50 cents from 175, that means that's almost a third. Almost 30. It's like 30%, right? 30% increase is big. How many salaries have increased 30% in the past week? So all the prices keep increasing. So that's a major problem. The prices keep increasing. So the prices keep increasing. Parallel, of course, the prices keep increasing, and the problem with the prices that they increase is the rent increase. I'm only going to say that my rent also goes up every year for the past 5 years, but my rent, let's say, I'm not going to say how much, I'm just going to say it's not more than $10 Canadian. Not more than $10 Canadian. Not more than $10. Maybe it's exactly $10. Maybe it's exactly $10. Maybe it's exactly $10. Maybe it's exactly $10. Maybe. I'm gonna leave it. Maybe it's $9.99. Maybe it's $9. Maybe it's 10 exactly. Not more than 10. So that's fundamental, of course, increase, of course, the rent increasing. The prices keep increasing of everything. Especially the goods, right? Thank goodness from where I bought now the Imperial Rose, they kept the same prices, but I wouldn't be surprised if their prices will also go up. But they had a special, so I got the special reduced. You get 5 more instead of 10, so I got that for $5. Imperial Rose, they're small, but they're filling you. But for $5, you eat 15, you're gonna be filled. You can even, that could be your only one meal if you cannot, if you have to strategize or whatever the case may be to get the meal and to get it in for whatever the circumstantial size and position which we are congruently to be, and to position ourselves in this meditative state now, as we are, of course, congruently to be on the love side of things, to get it doing for the parameters of which we are intersected. And of course we have our own vulnerabilities together collectively, because the majority, we are broke, right? Broke. And the problem is the growing credit card debts. Record credit card debts. So this applies, this economic financial situation applies from the majority of the population in both Canada and the United States. Both Canada and United States. Canada and United States is applicable nationally, binationally. So this situation, economic situation, applies for both Canada and the United States. This is the realities that we now face together, both Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the United States. So that's where we are now, right? That's where we are now. That's where we are now. So again, another problem is the stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are not keeping up with the prices increasing with the rents. That's the four problems. You can put it in any way. First, whatever is one top of the four. The point is that is so. So whether you put the stagnation of the salaries on the top of the four, because there's four main problems, or the growing cost of living, the prices keep increasing. Even today I noticed by 50 cents the wafers, which I buy pretty regularly, almost every week, because I love wafers, of course, by 50 cents, from 175 to 225. The rents. Mine went up also. It went up every year the past 7 years, but this year has been a bit more than usual by a few dollars. So I'm not going to say maybe it was 10 exactly. Maybe last year it was 7, maybe the year before it was 6, maybe the year before it was 5. So I guess it could be now. 7 years ago it was 4, then it was 5, 6 years ago then it was 6, then it was 7, then it was 8, it was 9, and finally this July 2025 it was $10. Maybe I'm just gonna say it was maximum $10. So it could be that it was increased by 10, my rent. Let's say it increased by at least I'm gonna say between now I'm gonna put in between, I'm gonna get more guessing, between 7 and 10. Maybe 10, maybe 7, maybe 10 exactly. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's within the norms, even less than the maximum that they're allowed, the landlords. And I gotta say it's fair. I'm not complaining because I think it's fair. I'm not complaining. For example, me in my position as a tenant, I'm not complaining about my rent increase specifically. Me as an individual, I find it that it's fair. But again, me, it's either 10 or less than 10, or or 7. Or more, between 7 and 10, whatever the case may be. But those are the four main problems. Rents going up, prices of rent, prices of increasing the prices of goods, and the stagnation of the salaries, and the record-breaking credit card. Even today now, somewhere across Montreal metropolis where we are in Hawk Island, HEWK, my totem bird, the hawk, somebody's swiping those credit cards. Somebody's passing those credit cards, somebody's swiping, somebody's buying with the credit card, somebody's going further into debt now, right? Somebody might getting a new job, that's good. Hopefully a raise, because if you raise prices and you don't raise the salaries, and then the majority is going to the top shareholders, corporations and CEOs and executive directors and the board members, right? Of those, it's trickling up instead of the trickle down, eh? We gotta get that balance by the DRT. My DRT best for Canada, United States. I'm gonna explain it now, and it is actually the only solution. The DRT for the creation of the UE, U.Universal, U.Exchange, U.Union. So it's of course the solution. The DRT or something similar again. I'm not going to say my DRT is the only solution, but fundamentally, in essence, the principle of my debt refusion theory is the solution. So the principles are the solution. Look at that big pothole. Wow, look at that. Isn't that huge? So when the DRT, we're going to be able to mass build, rebuild the infrastructure. So I'm going to explain it now. What is the DRT, the debt refusion theory? So I'm going to explain it. The DRT debt refusion theory. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt. So again, keep in mind that my DRT theory, the DRT debt refusion theory, includes and integrates monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. 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 Right? So keep in mind that my DRT, the debt refusion theory, integrated in my DRT theory is integrated. See, that's Ultraman, that's the other, that's the whole mountain. That's where it is. Ultraman, the other peak, West Mount and Mount Royal. But we're miles and miles and kilometers away, very far away from the mountain. But that's to say that you can see it in a far off, in like a encircled. You can see it afar off the mountain. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt. You know, we're gonna take all the public. So the DRT, I'm gonna explain it now, as I said. So again, we have no choice but to do it because a financial collapse can happen as soon as tomorrow, Wednesday. As soon as tomorrow, Wednesday. As soon as tomorrow, Wednesday. A financial collapse, right? As soon as tomorrow, Wednesday. So of course, it can happen as soon as tomorrow. Yeah, you can see it there. You can see it afar off. You can see it there. That's kilometers and miles away, you know, that's kilometers and miles away. Kilometers and miles away, and you can see it afar off. So that's basically, we have to implement my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory. So I'm going to explain it now. Keep in mind that my DRT theory also integrates monetary integration theory. And monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was integrated, implemented, that is, in the European Union in the 90s. The MIT, not to be confused, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. Back in the 90s, the Germans, Italians, French, Belgians, they destroyed their national central banks. Right? Many other countries, not just Germany, Belgium, Italy, France, many other countries destroyed their national central banks and they annulled their common currency. So they no longer have, in Germany, in Italy, France, Belgium, many countries, they don't have national central banks anymore. They don't have national central banks. In the 90s, they destroyed them, and they don't have their old currencies, such as the Deutschmark, the Lira, right, the Franc, and other currencies, of course, which were part of the European Union. They have the euro since the 90s. So my DRT theory includes that financial theory known as monetary integration theory in it. Inside my theory is integrated inside the DRT, monetary integration theory. So here it is explained. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, all the public and the private debt, my $10,000 to the RBC. I don't have credit cards myself. Credit cards myself. But of course, here it could be building a Dragon Army complex, SSD complex, a huge barracks. And from here we can work out all over the island with huge barracks, the whole mountain complex. Anyways, I'm gonna go, before I digress, I'm gonna go into the DRT. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt. My $10,000, which I have debt to the RBC, yours, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My debt, your debt, our debt. All the public and the private debt. We're going to, of course, convert it into US dollars. Into US dollars. All the public and the private debt. We're going to convert it into US dollars. All the public and the private debt. All the public and the private debt, we're going to convert it into US dollars. And of course, all the public and the private debt. See, that's part of the mountain. See there? That's Mount Royal proper. That's where we go. But that's miles and miles and kilometers away. So of course we're gonna take all the public and the private debt. My $10,000, your $10,000, their $10,000. All the public and the private debt. And we're gonna convert it into US dollars. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So all the public and the private debt. My $10,000, your $10,000. My $10,000, your $10,000. We're gonna convert it into US dollars. So mine, yours, ours. All the debt, public and private debt, we're gonna convert it into US dollars. We're gonna add it with the public-private debt because, of course, my DRTT has to be implemented. Has to be implemented binationally. Binationally, Canada, United States together. Canada, United States together. Canada, United States together, binationally. It has to be implemented binationally. Canada, United States together has to be implemented binationally. All my public-private debt, all the public-private debt of Canada, add it all up, convert it into US dollars. So do the conversion, and then add it with the US dollars, because Canada, United States, we're in a similar financial, economic, commercial situation where we face the four problems. Again, the growing cost of living with prices increasing every day. Every day the prices are going up. The salaries are stagnating, the rents are going up, and now we have, in the past 5 years, every other day, every week, we see record credit card debt for both Canada and the United States. So you realize that people are going more into debt with the salary stagnating. What's happening? You realize we're on the verge of a financial collapse and default. See, even on the public debt, we've skyrocketed debt because of the protocols which we have to implement during COVID, the coronavirus. We paid more interest. We had to support the population. Beautiful yellow flowers, which I love, as you know. We had to sustain the population, and of course, it has added pressures. Even last week, I saw in the news that Canadian public services are going to be cut. This was in the news, cut. The most in modern history. Now, what constitutes modern? M-O-D-E-R-N. Modern history? Do they mean the 20th century, or modern as in post since Confederation in 1876, or in the 20th and 21st century, in the past 25 years, in the past 50 years, in the 21st century, since the beginning of the 21st century? What is modern is ambiguous, but it means at least in the past 25 years, since the beginning of the 21st century, right? In Canada, the most cuts to the public service. So you see it right away. It's happening. It's already happening now. This July, it's happening now. Yeah, that's what it is. It's happening. It's happening, right? So that's what's happening. So it cannot be sustained. So that's what you need to remember, that you cannot sustain it. Hold on. So you cannot sustain it, So you cannot sustain. One have to cut in the services. So that's what has been happening, That's what has been happening and is happening. I'm thinking I'm gonna go by the side here, I'm gonna turn on the left, on the right. I'm gonna be careful here. Please raise the wages of the warehouse workers and the grocery store clerks by a bit. They need a bit of 10% now with the cost of living, price and the rent. Just at least, at least. So that's what it is. So that is consequently something which we have to be doing on that, and we have to be doing on the go, and we have to be on the realization of this where we are now. This where we are. This is just where we are for the majority of the population. And capital needs to be spread. Money needs to be made roundabout, to get it on the go, to get it on that go for the left, for the right, for the Z and for the X, Some things which we gotta be on that complementary side. And that's how we gotta get doing like that, Something which we have to be doing on the left and on the right. And in the prudence, because we gotta get on that valorization to get the dollar's worth. But that's just how we are now today. In the societal love today, that's how we do it, So that's just the strategies, which of course we have to use as a bipolar strategy. Again, not to be confused with bipolar as in the mental psychological condition. Wow, so many left here. Look at that. So many left here. Look at that. I'm gonna count them, maybe count them on the go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm not gonna continue counting them on that. That's why I'm gonna count them a little bit, but just quite a cluster. So usually you're supposed to leave them over there, right? I guess you're still going to Walmart, so it's still that work, but you made the person work from Walmart. They're gonna get to go extra steps, I guess. Paid by the hour, but still, you know. Whatever. Just give him a thank you, you know. He's gonna go pick it up. Think about that. So we have no choice really but to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. The DRT. So once I cross to the other side, I'm gonna fully explain it, and I guess I'm gonna require some hydration, because if I explain it here, I guess I can start, but due to the noise here, it's gonna be more difficult. So I guess I could just begin here in my own neighborhood. Nothing that I want to go back to, but I used to live down here in an underground small basement, very moldy, like a type of prison cell. A few meters away, that way to the right, small underground moldy black mold, and greenish type of reddish whitish mold, and it was underground and small. And I moved in, I thought it was 2016 July, but it seems like it was 2015 July. So I moved, and I was depressed, suicidal. I went traverse Canada coast to coast. That event changed my whole life, and I started over, I guess, several times, and I'm about to start over, I guess, this 2025. And of course, it was a moldy place, and I started working out, training, exercising after I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event really changed my whole life and get the dynamics of my life. And I wrote so many ideas, theories, protocols, initiatives, which are mostly summarized in the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom umbrella, which is fundamentally my dream for the fusion via public-private partnership of Canada and the United States, and the creation of two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, the North American Integrated SSD Legion for Security Service and Defense, and the North American Integrated Dance League, the North American Integrated Dance League, to dance for the environment, environmental action and pleasure. And you know, we got those trucks, we got those truckers going east, west, north, and they're going around the about, and you gotta watch it here with the bikes. Be careful, because sometimes there's children, you know. You better have a honk, you know. Better not go by the bike that fast here. My advisory to all, I know you wanna go by the bike, but sometimes there's children with families and children, and you know, it might not be the appropriate thing to do. Just a little bit of a citizen, individual citizen mindfulness, because I also have Asperger's, and my aspiness sometimes can be cumbersome, bothersome, not understand, create feelings of insecurity to others. And of course, I don't like violence myself. I was attacked by surprise a few years ago and hit my head, was bloodied up, and had a dislocated right arm, shoulder. I went to the Jewish general, and I was placed on some meds. Was like in a coma, and I got plenty of scars on my body. And I live with that trauma, live with my Asperger's, which you cannot medicate because it's not a mental illness. But I also got a fetish for cranes. Crane operators on those cranes. You know how they go on the lanes. Got the crane operators that there be. Got the crane operators that you see for the left and for the right. For the butchers, for the bakers, for the nurses, for the doctors, for those firefighters. You know that we gotta see for the left in harmony. for those butchers and bakers, for the nurses, for the doctors and for the firefighters, for those getting some of that lecture, for the left and for the right, for the BM, for the sight, for the left and for the bites, for you know we out of sight, out of spite, we don't give some ease, no gamble. So that's gotta get that rock and roll, and that's all we gotta get drilling with that, and we gotta get drilling on the go now as we go. So we gotta be adjacent to all the simultaneous protocols of which we have, and you know, we gotta get some of that red, traverse the streets, red, 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 my favorite color, red, 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 my favorite color, what I said, gotta play and gotta read, got some books and got some red, I don't know what that little poster was, but I don't know anything about that. See, I'm curious, that's red, 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 but what was that? I'm gonna go back to check it out. See where I don't know what that is, but nothing to do with me. 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 Bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey. Turn to me, saluting the firefighters. Salute the firefighters, carpenters, butchers, bakers, and nurses, doctors, and helicopters, all those involved in the production and distribution of food. And that's how we gotta get that rock and roll, and we got a little bit of that arbeit being done, and arbeit being conducted, and arbeit being done, and that's how we gotta get doing with that. So something which we gotta manifest together. And I wonder if the prices went up there. I don't remember going there. Oh, this was a pizza which moved from a place, was not far away on the other side, and it moved here now. I think it moved during COVID, 5 or 6 years, 7 years maybe. And I used to come here, there was a dollar cinema. I used to shop here because this is my own neighborhood, just passing through, by the way. Nothing that I want to go back to, because I was in a way worse position, life that I'm living now. And that's all we got, and that's why we gotta get that rock and roll, you know, for the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And that's how we gotta get on the transmission side of things. And that's how we have to get it on the love, and always open for gigs, and to do gigs and business. I'm financially stressed, so that's how we have to be doing a little bit of that solar flex and solar plex. And you know, sometimes we gotta fight racism with actions. It's subconscious sometimes, eh? We have maybe certain levels, just as we have discrimination against my LGBTQ community and fellow neurodivergent community, fellow Ashbies, you know, with 80% unemployment. You realize that is totally unacceptable, and that's how we got, and that's how we do, you know. I'm gonna go hydrate. That's how we gotta get doing. So that's how we have to be doing there, you know. Look at that. That's how we gotta get doing. So that's something which you have to be accordant about. And here's when I wanted to hydrate, a little bit of that hydration. Gotta thank the workers who built this. Imagine, otherwise we'll be drinking from the river. So civilization is a privilege. Usually let about 10 to 20 seconds for, of course, the water to get that good rust out, and then we're gonna hydrate afterwards. So we're gonna count now because we already got some seconds, and now we're gonna hydrate it all the way to the top. For the road. For the DRT to get it properly explained. Oh yeah, whew, that was good. So yeah, I used to live close by here in a moldy place, underground basement. I moved, and from that place, if I would have stayed, I would have probably been dead or in jail, or not in jail really, but maybe I would have become a member of the underworld criminal organization. underworld. I don't like violence, I don't like things like that. I want to make an honest living. I'm just saying that I don't know for real what I would have ended up, probably. Who knows? 'Cause I was depressed, suicidal, no longer joyous. Also with gratitude and working out. But what's more important now is that you pay attention fully to the DRT, debt refusion theory, among other things which I've discussed. So the DRT, again, we have to implement it. There's no way around it. Because of Canada and the United States, we're facing the four main problems, which is the growing cost of living. Everything is going up. Price of bread, price of cheese, price of butter, price of eggs, price of everything that we need, including my wafers, went up again. Second time, 50 cents. That's $1. There used to be $1.25. Now they're $2.25 in just 3.5 years. That's almost double, so that's almost double from their increase. So it increased again. It was 175 from 125. Now last week I got it at 175. This week is 225. So whatever the case may be, that's how we gotta get doing with that. And I love that red, my favorite color. And that's what we have to be circumstantial about in the positions where we are. And of course we gotta be conducive to get the DRT, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, the universal exchange unit. That's what we gotta get doing, and we gotta get drilling on that as we go, something which we have to be appellated about, and the appellations is something which we have to be conclusive about, and that's what we gotta get doing with the DRT, debt refusion theory, and that's how we gotta get on that left side of things here, cross the street prudently, left and right, left and right, left and right. When you cross the street, always turn your heads left and right and left, and that's what we have to be doing there, to get on that prudent side. And we're just gonna switch lanes on the DRT, switch some of those laney lanes, and that's just how we cross the street safely, by making sure, right? Now we cross the street safely. So the DRT, four main things: the growing cost of living, price of everything are going up, rents are increasing, the stagnation of the salaries, and the credit cards being maxed out and credit card debt increasing. So those are the problematics which you have in the most problem terms of where we are now simultaneously on this 2025 July 15th for both Canada and United States. For both Canada and United States, for both Canada and the United States. So consequently and imprudently, of course, we have to implement my DRT theory. There's just no way around it. So you can argue all you want. If not my DRT, something which of course resembles fundamentally and in essence resembles my DRT theory. So that is just what we have to be doing, the DRT theory consequently, or something similar to my DRT theory. So listen carefully. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, convert all the public private debt of my private public debt. We're going to convert it into US dollars. All Canadian public private debt, we're going to add it with the US dollars. This money put together is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. Once we're going to call a new currency into the new currency, we're going to create a new currency and a new central bank. That's why I made the statement that in my DRT theory is included, integrated in my DRT, the debt refusion theory is integrated the MIT, the monetary integration theory, which is the economic, financial, commercial theory, which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s. So we're going to create a new currency based on the value of the US dollar and a new central bank, the Republican Imperial Central Bank of the Empire. And we're going to issue the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange unit, the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange unit, the UE, universal, U dot E dot exchange unit, the U dot universal, E dot exchange unit, the universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollars. The value of the US dollars the UE will have the value of the US dollar at that point in time. Let's do it ASAP. It has to be done ASAP. So all that money we're going to create what is going to be the existing money in circulation. And of course we're going to rebuild the infrastructure of the North American Collective, rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the bridges, the aqueducts, rebuild the highways, build those 44 mass build, construct 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war, mass finance citizens for towards fitness activities, mass finance citizens fitness activities, mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise, and mass finance tourism across the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, which we're going to fuse into the Imperial 63. And of course, mass finance the construction of those 44 tunnels, and those 44 tunnels are going to be inspired by the building of the Cheyenne Mountain, which is the NORAD headquarters, and of course the Montreal Underground Village. And paradoxically, I'm no fan, no supporter of Hamas, but in Gaza, underneath Gaza, Hamas and other organizations, institutions, with the help of others, supposedly between 2007, June, when they took power in June 2007, they built hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, hundreds of miles and kilometers, between 350 miles and about 500 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza, the Gaza Strip, underneath all the cities of the Gaza Strip. So they built hundreds of miles and kilometers of tunnels. So these 44 mass tunnels systems are going to be for us to be built in case of a thermonuclear war across the empire, meaning the fusion of Canada and the United States. Because my DRT, again, is part of the bipolar geopolitical, not to be confused with the bipolar as in the psychological, psychiatric sense, but is in the bipolar strategy, bipolar strategy, you know, bipolar strategy. Bipolar strategy. Bipolar strategy. Bipolar strategy. As in the psychological, not in the psychological psychiatric condition, but the bipolar is just a mere, as a mere reference to, of course, the geopolitical complex context. The geopolitical complex and context. That's just what it is. The geopolitical context complex. That is the geopolitical strategy. That's just what we have to implement. There's just no way around it. Just no way around it. So you can argue all you want, but complexities and the fundamental complexities is, of course, the complexities fundamentally, of course, which we have to get it on the go now, and that's why we're gonna have to get drilling on that, and we're gonna have to get on the go for the North American imperial population. Of course, the fusion of Canada and the United States. So the DRT, the depth of fusion theory, fundamentally for the creation of the UE, is what we have to be doing for the universal exchange unit, the UE, universal exchange unit. That's what we have to do. There's no way out of this. So that's why it takes the mobilization of the citizen population and a public-private partnership. And we're going to create the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Republican, Imperial Democratic Imperial Republican SSD Legion, Security, Service, and Defense, and in parentheses, a fourth dimension to that SSD Trinity, to be able to, and for emergency responses as much as we can, localized across the 63 and integrated with all existing institutions and organizations for security service, security service and defense, and that's how we got for security service and defense. So complementary in the covenant cooperative oath, who are been here since the past 7 years, let's say since 2017. They have no criminal convictions or we can overlook some stealing some bread and cheese if you had to eat, or some minor convictions, you know, it was slap to somebody or push somebody, or you know, now we're not talking about major crimes here, but you know, sometimes things happen. Everybody deserves second, third chances, but you know, that's what I need to give amnesty even to those migrants, temporary workers, illegal aliens, whatever we call it. We give if they don't have criminal convictions, to be able to work and support the Dragon Army. And to build those 44 tunnels, we also need to do the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. My brothers and sisters who lost their liberty, as I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, I always gotta sing that rock and roll for the brothers and sisters who take their second chances and do their criminal rehabilitation, who take their second chances and take their criminal rehabilitation and turn their life around, because that's the whole point. We gotta get some justice, and a lot of people deserve second, third chances. I was just talking to an anonymous acquaintance, was maybe becoming a friend intellectually, academically. We kind of have great intellectual timing. He knows I have Asperger's, and you know, he knows what Asperger's is, so it has been easier and more understanding for us to communicate, because we only discuss mostly intellectual academic ideas and theories, and we discuss Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein and sci-fi writers as Isaac Asimov, and of course we also discuss Ursula K. Le Guin, among others. Those four, but not only those four authors, but we discuss other ideas and theories. But nonetheless, he has a certain disability, and I'm not going to go into details, but he, a citizen who also, because of that disability, receives an amount allocated monthly. You know, it's not, but it allows him to survive, you know. So I discussed it in Concordium of these privileges which we have, you know, to have a social assistance net. I had to live for the month of July on $870. Paid my rent, and then paid my electricity bill, paid my rent, and then gotta pay my phone, and I got food. And that's why I take donations there, the food near my place, because of course the food security is something which of course is important. But for Asperger's, it has certain disabilities. In theory, for Asperger's, you can get an extra, I think, $400, but I'm not officially diagnosed. I've been diagnosed by several individuals and throughout the years, and finally I accepted it about 3.5 years ago, because for years and years and years people have been diagnosing me. I mean, you know, you have Asperger's, I didn't want to wear the label because in certain things we are less able, but I don't require much support. We have these routines, and and paradoxically, with all my financial stress, with all my scars, well, I put on the table the DRT, the debt refusion theory, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, the DRT for the creation of the UE, and I will to build the 4, like I said, North American People's Imperial Coliseum, construction workers rock and roll, North American People's Imperial Coliseum, to build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess, Jody DSS, Goddess Temple, the Pyramid, Scarlet Crimson, our Shades of Red, House of the Dragon, and the House of the Dragon, Pyramid, House of the Dragon, and the other one is the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community. That's all we have. So we got a French here, and I gotta remember for French, because I gotta put it in a little bit of French, because we love the Provence, and I kind of like that red and white. See, red and white, white and red, kind of goes good together, I guess. And I heard somebody speak French, and we got that French here in Quebec, so that's a reminder for me to spit some French. Ready or not, here it comes. Put it in for that French. Grateful, thankful, my rent paid, electricity bill paid, and got food and coffee, and always like a little bit of that French now, because we love Belle Province, and that's what we have to be doing, and I have to put it on up for the French, because I'm a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, was born in the United States 3 times, post 1776. Just read George Patton's Through a Glass Darkly. One of my favorite poems is Through a Glass Darkly, where George Patton discusses reincarnations, but his outlining of his reincarnations, never did he mention that he was a woman, but I was sometimes a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man. So that's why I'm 50-50 now, androgynous, pansexual, and of course 2,600 years ago. George Patton was my wife. I love that for the children is good. Thank you to the public workers who built that. It's a great day. It's a French. Because we la belle province. Bienvenue à Québécois et Québécoises. Bienvenue dans la belle province. Québécois et Québécoises, on est dans la belle province. Je vous encourage bien sûr à faire de l'entraînement physique. Et l'entraînement physique, c'est quelque chose qui vous encourage. Comme qu'on voit les jeunes, il faut bien sûr de l'entraînement physique ici, bien sûr. Où qu'on est rendu à voir le deuxième jour. Il fait chaud, je dois dire. Il fait chaud, fait chaud, fait chaud. La chaleur, c'est une chaleur quand même aujourd'hui que ben, c'est l'été, mais il fait bien sûr un peu plus que d'habitude. Fait que c'est quelque chose que je dois toujours encourager les gens de boire de l'eau. Hydratez-vous bien comme il le faut. Je viens d'aller voir un film, Comment entraîner son dragon, un bon petit film que je regarderai encore. Puis Gerard Butler, j'étais surpris qu'il était là, Gerard Butler. Ils ont fait un beau petit film, puis la semaine passée, je suis allé voir Ballerina dans l'univers de John Wick. Fait que mardi prochain, j'ai déjà mis de côté une couple de pièces, pas beaucoup, mais beaucoup pour voir un film à 5$, parce qu'aujourd'hui, mardi, c'est encore 5$ par personne, donc je peux me permettre d'avoir un film cet été. C'est un des petits plaisirs que je fais, bien sûr, avec cette marche d'entraînement physique. Après avoir vu le film, je me retourne chez nous. Finir à manger, je me suis acheté quelque chose à encore 5$ en spécial. Fait que j'ai pu me permettre un peu de spécial de m'acheter pour que je mange, pour que j'aille à manger, bien sûr, dans les achats, bien sûr, que j'ai fait moi-même. C'est sur un budget, fait que j'ai toujours un budget serré, là, fait que c'est toujours quelque chose que j'ai une bonne gratitude. Après avoir dépensé le peu d'argent, de budget que je me suis contenté pour pouvoir visionner ce film. Bon, fait que je vais vous dire, c'est que oui, moi je l'ai bien aimé. Je l'ai bien aimé le film sans trop placoter puis faire trop d'analyse de ce film. Juste que c'est un beau petit film avec des thèmes intéressants. Puis bien sûr, c'est des dragons. Et bien sûr, je suis un dragon, pas par naissance, mais par la volonté, par la soirée, par l'entraînement physique, par tout ce que j'ai parcouru pour être aujourd'hui le 15 juillet. Votre dragon arc-en-ciel, artiste, athlète, philosophe et analyste théoricien géopolitique qui vit avec l'Asperger's. Vous savez que je vis avec une condition de neurodivergence qui s'appelle l'Asperger's. C'est l'Asperger's, c'est l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. Donc, ce autisme hautement fonctionnel, ça fait bien sûr que je suis différent de ce point de vue de différence. On est qu'est-ce qu'on est. Fait que c'est une chose que moi-même j'envisage à discuter le plus possible dans le point où que je vis maintenant. C'est un point un peu de critique. C'est pas un point de critique vraiment, c'est un point d'expliquer bien sûr qu'est-ce que c'est et qu'est-ce que c'est pas l'Asperger's. L'Asperger's, l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, c'est pas une maladie, c'est une condition de neurodivergence. Notre cerveau, il y a des mutations. Certains aspects de notre cerveau, ben c'est sûr, c'est pas visible à l'externe, ça n'a pas des bulles qui sortent du cerveau, puis c'est pas visible, c'est à l'intérieur au niveau nano, au niveau nano-micro, microscopique. Vraiment, vraiment au niveau microscopique. Donc, c'est pas visible, c'est pas visible là, sur le crâne, sur le cerveau en tant que tel. C'est à l'intérieur. Pensez-y comme 4 petits micropuces, c'est tellement micro, là, c'est tellement des microscopiques, bien sûr, que ces mutations, bien sûr, sont d'une variation dans ce point de terminologie pour qu'on puisse dire que c'est vraiment petit. Micro, au niveau microscopique. Donc, à cause de ces variations, ces mutations du cerveau, nous, on voit le monde différemment. Fait qu'en voyant le monde différemment, on a certaines caractéristiques. C'est pas des symptômes. Des symptômes, c'est pour une maladie. L'Asperger's on peut pas donner des médicaments à des gens, des citoyens comme moi qui vivent avec l'Asperger's. Parce que c'est ça, c'est un aspect comme moi vit la dépression, le suicide, comment je l'ai vécu. Là, oui, là, vous pouvez dire qu'il faut y avoir pour ces conditions de côté de l'Asperger's, c'est des conditions qui peuvent être liées à l'Asperger's parce que nous, les aspects, on voit le monde différemment. Fait qu'à cause de comment on voit le monde puis comment on interagit, à cause de ces mutations au niveau microscopique, on a misère à certaines choses. Donc, comment qu'on voit les choses et dans les normes de la société. Des fois, je vais vous donner un exemple concret. Quelqu'un va me demander comment ça va, je vais dire, ça va comme ça, ou si ça va pas bien, je vais dire, ça va pas bien. Et bien sûr, ça va pas bien dans ce point de circonstance, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point où que je suis rendu, bien sûr, aujourd'hui, je vais dire, ça va pas bien, ou je suis en crise, je vis un stress financier. Comme je l'ai dit il y a un couple de semaines de moi, j'étais sur la montagne, je l'avais dit à un citoyen, puis il dit je m'excuse, puis je dis toujours pourquoi vous excusez, c'est pas votre faute. Vous comprenez, c'est des choses que la société, c'est comme du théâtre, on prétend, c'est les réponses que, dans le fond, c'est pas nécessairement la vérité, mais qu'est-ce qu'on dit, c'est par comment qu'on doit avoir un protocole de la société, des normes de la société. Fait qu'on dit, OK, ça va où, ça va, tu sais. Fait que ces choses-là, c'est difficile pour nous. Une de certaines choses, une autre chose, c'est pas des symptômes, c'est des caractéristiques. On va répéter 2-3 fois la même chose, on va dire exactement la même phrase que quelqu'un dit. Si quelqu'un dit, bien sûr, une phrase, on va peut-être dire la même chose directement. Ensemble, on va faire la répétition. Donc, c'est sûr qu'en faisant la répétition de la même phrase, ça peut paraître bizarre qu'on veut offenser. C'est pas parce qu'on veut, c'est juste que notre cerveau est différent. Fait qu'on a ces mutations, fait qu'on a ces distinctions. Puis on peut être intense, on peut être concentré, on peut être super dedans, on peut être super intense, super dedans, super concentré, au point de vue d'être très... On peut être comme très intense dans certaines choses. On a qu'est-ce qu'on appelle les intérêts spéciaux. Et ces intérêts spéciaux nous préoccupent la plupart du temps. Fait que la plupart de notre quotidien, bien sûr, mais la plupart de notre quotidien, bien sûr, ça se tourne autour de ces intérêts. Ça se tourne autour de ces intérêts. Fait que se tourne autour de ces intérêts, bien sûr, qui sont intérêts spéciaux, fixés. Ça peut être que moi-même, je suis super dedans, je suis super intense, je suis super concentré quand je fais des choses qui m'intéressent. C'est des intérêts spéciaux. C'est pas des obsessions. Il y en a qui disent des intérêts obsessifs, mais je n'utilise pas le mot obsessif parce qu'obsessif, c'est pour vous, les 99,56%. Avec lesquels nous, les Aspergers, qui faisons partie de cette petite minorité de moins d'1%, moins de la moitié d'un pourcentage, c'est 0,44%. Il n'y a pas bien des Aspergers dans le monde. Fait que nous, on doit toujours bâtir des ponts, des petits ponts, des ponts moyens, des ponts longs, des ponts extra longs, extra larges. Fait que c'est toujours bâtir ces ponts-là de la manière, c'est sûr que c'est 4 catégories, je vous ai donné, dans ces 4 catégories, il peut y avoir dans chaque catégorie un troisième, ou dans ces 4, il peut y avoir 4 autres. Fait que juste, généralement, on doit bâtir des ponts. Parce que j'ai pas de relation, j'ai pas de sentiment antagoniste envers vous, les 99%, mais on souffre les aspis parce que on a 3 problèmes majeurs. Le manque d'amis, je veux rien savoir vraiment, mais si vous voulez être mon ami avec bénéfice, des amis avec bénéfice, échange de massage, vous aimez le rock and roll, je peux en chanter, je peux en composer, je peux vous me chanter, je vous dis, je vous fais un parallèle, je vous fais un complément ou pas, je veux dire que j'aimais un peu qu'est-ce que vous avez, un petit son, un petit bon, une petite phrase, un petit paragraphe, une petite discussion du rock'n'roll du Québec ou rock'n'roll en général. La danse, c'est mon sport préféré. Le sport, l'entraînement physique, on peut y aller avec le hockey, le rock'n'roll. Le sport, la danse, c'est mon sport préféré. La boxe, que ça soit, et bien sûr, la géopolitique. Dans ces 3 choses-là. Fait que si vous avez un intérêt commun, ou sinon, amis avec bénéfice, ou sinon, prêtez allégeance légion. Prêtez allégeance légion, je viens savoir. C'est des choses, bien sûr, prêtez allégeance légion, ben, je viens savoir. C'est des choses comme ça, bien sûr, que je veux vous dire, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point de contention que je suis moi-même, dans ce point de l'avoir vivre, dans ce point de concentrement, et bien sûr, dans ce point de vivre ici ensemble, bien sûr, qu'on doit bâtir ces ponts. On doit bâtir, puis encore une fois, il n'y a pas de relation antagoniste. Il n'y a pas de relation antagoniste, il n'y a pas de relation antagoniste envers moi. Et nous, la petite minorité d'Aspergers, et vous, la majorité de 99,5, et même que bien des Aspergers, on a de quoi en contribuer. Avant que je continue, je dois remercier mon ami anonyme pour le don des livres, 2 livres sur l'autisme, hautement fonctionnel et l'Aspergers. Et bien sûr, un livre que je conseille, c'est en anglais, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's. apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's. Apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger's. Fait que l'appréciation du syndrome de l'Asperger's. Parce que moi, je suis bon dans certaines choses, je suis pas bon dans d'autres choses, mais je suis super bon dans la géopolitique, je suis un analyste théoricien, et mes stratégies de la géopolitique pour le Canada et le Québec, les États-Unis ensemble, j'aime ça, ces 4 petites fleurs, 1, 2, 3, 4, ils sont belles, blanches, on dirait de la neige, hein? Hey, regardez ça, wow! Ces 4 fleurs majeures sont belles. Fait que dans ce point, bien sûr, d'avoir des conséquences, bien sûr, ou que moi-même, je dois me prononcer, puis j'ai la preuve pour celle-là, j'ai prévu, bien sûr, qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant, tu sais. J'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019, en octobre et en novembre 2019. J'ai prévu la situation actuelle qui se déroule en ce moment d'une manière générale. Tournez la tête de la gauche à droite avant de vous traverser pour votre prudence, car moi-même, je suis à l'extérieur, donc j'ai moi-même, en tant que citoyen souverain, des responsabilités additionnelles que j'ai pas chez nous. J'ai payé mon loyer pour le mois de juillet, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité. La semaine passée, je vais payer semaine prochaine, je veux dire, pas dans le passé, j'ai pas de machine de temps pour passer dans l'arrière, là, mais dans le futur, jusqu'à la semaine prochaine, je vais payer ma facture de téléphone. J'ai jusqu'à la fin du mois pour payer ma facture de cellulaire, donc je devais être correct. Fait que là, je vais pas vous perdre votre temps, puis vous juste des amis avec votre bénéfice, prêtez ou parallèlement, prêtez allégeance légion, soutenez mon rêve, qui est fondamentalement un appel pour un partenariat public-privé à travers le Canada et les États-Unis pour se fusionner à la manière d'une république démocrate impériale par la trinité de mes théories, bien sûr. Le problème chez les Asperger, c'est un taux de suicide et de dépression élevé 9 fois plus que la plupart des citoyens et citoyennes. Parallèlement à ce problème, il y a un autre problème, bien sûr, qui se rajoute. C'est bien sûr le problème de sans emploi. C'est inacceptable. 80%, là, 4 sur 5. Moi, j'ai eu bien de l'emploi des 5-7 dernières années durant la COVID. Ils ont duré 2-3 semaines, 2-3 mois, 4 mois, peut-être une probation de 3 mois, 2-3 semaines. Mais c'est ça le problème. 80%, là. Puis nous, on est une petite communauté, même plus petite que ma communauté de LGBTQ, donc j'en fais partie. Je suis androgyne pansexuel moi-même, aussi artiste, athlète, qui compose bien du rock'n'roll, puis les camionneurs, les travailleurs du rock Québec, du passé et du présent, puis les travailleurs qui vont bâtir, construire, bien sûr, les aqueducs, qui vont construire les aqueducs, qui vont faire la conduite des aqueducs, les pompiers aussi. Toutes ces choses-là, toute cette civilisation est un privilège, tu sais. Avoir de l'eau potable, avoir de l'électricité, c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que c'est un privilège, tu sais, dans ce point de compromis, bien sûr, où que je vis, bien sûr, maintenant. C'est des choses que moi-même, je dois le faire de la point de concordance pour mettre en appréciation tout qu'est-ce que notre collectif de civilisation y a à mettre en valeur, bien sûr. Fait, c'est toujours quelque chose qu'on doit dire, puis aujourd'hui, je dois dire, encore une fois, je répète, j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant dans le monde, j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant dans le monde de la géopolitique. Moi-même, c'est ça un de mes intérêts spéciaux. Nous, les espions, on a des intérêts spéciaux. Donc, on est super intense, super concentré, super dedans. Quand on travaille, quand on s'implique, quand on travaille, quand on étudie ou quand on s'engage dans ces intérêts spéciaux. Et moi-même, c'est la géopolitique. Le rock'n'roll, la danse, le sport, l'entraînement physique, la danse est mon sport préféré. Fait que en 2019, en octobre-novembre, puis pour celle-là, j'ai la preuve, j'ai prévu, bien sûr, qu'est-ce qui se passe aujourd'hui. Qu'est-ce qui se passe aujourd'hui? Je l'ai prévu en 2019. En 2019. Je l'ai prévu, mes chers, en 2019. J'ai prévu la situation actuelle. J'ai la preuve pour celle-là. C'est ça, je dis, mais si vous voulez vous engager avec moi dans une de ces choses, à part ça, à part mon stress financier, je suis joyeux, jovial, la sœur, qu'est-ce qui pourrait m'aider le plus pour avoir plus de joie, ça serait avoir un partenaire qui s'assoie ou pouvoir me permettre des massages thérapeutiques. Parce que moi, depuis que j'ai sorti de ma dépression en 2017, ça a fait 8 ans quand j'ai traversé le Canada de côte à côte, cet événement, ça m'a complètement changé ma vie. Puis j'ai établi un esprit de corps solide avec le Canada et le Québec. Depuis ce temps-là, bien sûr, ça l'a fait, bien sûr, un gros changement dans ma vie. Et j'étais à 293 livres, j'ai commencé à m'entraîner, j'ai perdu entre 80 et 93 livres. Fait que depuis ce temps-là, bien sûr, je m'entraîne, puis je fais l'entraînement physique. J'ai même créé mon propre système d'entraînement physique, puis je fais mes vidéos de YouTube. Maintenant, bien sûr, qu'est-ce que je dois dire? C'est qu'il faut implémenter la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. Parce que on est rendu à un point économique, financier, là. On a 4 problèmes majeurs. Même maintenant, je viens de voir l'augmentation des prix. Les prix, ça augmente, bien sûr, ça continue d'augmenter les prix, bien sûr. Ça n'arrête pas d'augmenter. Même les gaufres que j'achète, ils étaient à 1,75 la semaine passée, j'ai acheté, ils ont augmenté encore de 50 cents. Ils sont rendus à 2,25 $. De 1,75 encore 50 cents. Avant, il était 1,25. Fait qu'en 3 ans et demi, 1 $. Les loyers aussi augmentent. Je dis moi-même, mon loyer s'est augmenté de 10 au moins, maximum 10, je ne dirais pas exactement, c'est peut-être 10 exactement. Les cartes de crédit, il y a un surendettement des cartes de crédit et bien sûr la stagnation des salaires. Ça, je vous présente sur la table la TRD pour la stratégie bipolaire, pas être confondu avec la bipolarité de la psychiatrie et de la psychologie. La parle même d'une stratégie bipolaire. Une stratégie bipolaire, bien sûr, une stratégie bipolaire pure uniquement vis-à-vis la stratégie, bien sûr, de la bipolarité, bien sûr, du point de vue de la circonférence de la géopolitique seulement. Fait que je parle de la géopolitique. Ma stratégie bipolaire qui inclut la TRD. Je vous l'explique. La TRD, on n'a pas le choix de l'implémenter. On est à veille d'avoir un effondrement financier. On va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000, ton 10 000, de côte à côte. Moi, j'ai 10 000, j'ai pas de carte de crédit. Je suis 10 000 $ en dette à la Banque Royale. Donc, on va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, de côte à côte, mon 10 000, ton 10 000. On va faire la conversion de toute la dette publique-privée dans la devise des États-Unis. On va faire l'addition avec la devise des États-Unis. Celle-là, cet argent-là, on va le mettre ensemble. On va faire la création d'une nouvelle banque centrale. Comme qu'ils ont fait en Europe, car dans ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, ça inclut la théorie de fusion. Dans ma théorie de la refusion de la dette est intégrée, ça intègre la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est la théorie que les Européens ont fait l'implémentation dans les années 90. Fait que tout cet argent-là, ça a fondé une nouvelle banque. On va faire la création de l'UI, U point unité, point échange, point universel. U point unité, point échange universel. U point unité, point échange. U point unité, point échange. U point unité, point échange, point universel. L'unité d'échange universelle aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. Oui, avec cet argent-là, on va rebâtir l'infrastructure, financer les gens à l'entraînement physique, faire un grand recensement. Il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation Canada-États-Unis binationale, bien sûr. On va faire la création, bâtir 44 tunnels dans le cadre d'une guerre thermonucléaire. On va faire un recensement, on va faire la création d'un passeport commun. Puis on va faire la création, bien sûr, de 2 institutions de partenariat public-privé pour la SSD totale, basée sur mes nouveaux protocoles du Dragon de 9.1 pour la sécurité service totale, intégrée avec toutes les institutions de sécurité et de services qui existent en ce moment, et bien sûr basé sur mes philosophies, puis bien sûr l'armée du Dragon, l'armée impériale républicaine du Canada et des États-Unis conjointement pour la sécurité service d'État, SSD, sécurité service défense, avec l'armée de l'ATS qui danse sur la Ligue impériale de danse pour l'environnement et la nature.